tonight on Focal Point.
People from Northern Ireland gathering to show their dismay to these austerity measures that are being imposed by Stormont. It's totally and utterly unacceptable, and this is something that's going to affect every single family in Northern Ireland.
The strike is for our future, for our children, for old people and young people. It's not one particular health or education, it's for everybody in Northern Ireland.
Well, the main issue that we're talking about today is a debate around whether voluntary organisations should campaign and lobby or whether they should stick to the knitting, as a famous short-lived minister said.
In Northern Ireland, we're very clear about that. We don't get involved in, if you like, party politics, but we have a right to comment on social issues.
Today is a historical achievement for the Gaeltacht Quarter's development as a major and emerging tourism destination in Belfast, taking its place amongst the great destinations in Europe, and Gaeltacht Quarter being recognised, and rightly so, and the bestowment of that hotspot status.
The motivation behind the strike today is the savage attack on the public services, and it goes deeper than that because the knock-on effect of that will obviously be to communities, families, etc, etc.
Basically, the public services are being decimated. You've got all of the jobs that are due to go if the voluntary exit schemes go ahead. You've got staff that are being given more work, and they've already got too much work to do, and if more people go, you're just going to overload the services. There's going to be a lot of services that can't actually be provided in the future if things go ahead. So we're just saying we can't accept this no more. We can't let it go ahead, or we don't know what the future's going to look like for any of us.
While the source of the problem is the Westminster driven cutbacks, the reality is that we're in conflict with the Northern Ireland Executive because they're in fact commissioned with implementing these cutbacks. We'll have this strike today and the protest, and we'll be carrying out a campaign over the next number of weeks to get a commitment from MPs who are elected in the May elections to take the position that they will refuse to support any government formation which does not call a halt to the public expenditure cuts.
Well, the money's there. Taxing the corporations, etc., and the billions and billions of pounds of uncollected tax would ensure that public services are properly funded for the future.
Well, the services are getting hit right across the public service in Northern Ireland, the health service, the civil service, which stands to lose around 3,000 jobs in the next year, education sector, schools, virtually all services in Northern Ireland are going to be detrimentally affected by these cutbacks. And what we're seeing aren't one-off cutbacks. What this represents is a fundamental attempt to reduce public expenditure, to shrink the state, and that means the future is bleak for people.
We can't stand by and do nothing, so we have to take a stand at some point.
Well, I think what the Assembly needs to do is exercise as much anger as the public sector workers and start campaigning in a serious way to force Westminster to halt these cuts. They have an opportunity coming up potentially with the hung Parliament in May, and all our MPs from Northern Ireland should be saying no agreement from us unless the cuts are stopped. There is plenty of money in the system. Corporate bank accounts are overflowing, massive subsidies to private sector employers through social security benefit for low-wage workers, and also massive injection of money to private landlords in the form of housing benefit. And for instance, if the government introduced a rent freeze in the private sector, that would save millions upon millions of pounds. So the money's there, it's just in the wrong hands, and it's not being distributed properly.
The public services just can't be delivered if these cuts go ahead, and what we want to do is stop the cuts and reverse what's been happening at the minute. So.
Well, what we hope again is we hope to show the government and the executive here in Northern Ireland that we're not going to take this lightly.
And what we're seeing is a significant, substantial and unprecedented reduction in the funding of these services, and that is going to lead to a major deterioration of the services that the community rely on.
Well, we can't continue. It means that the public themselves are going to have to accept that we're not going to be able to do as much basically as we can at the minute. The health service is basically going to lose people. There's going to be longer waiting lists. You're going to have schools that are going to close. You're going to have more children in classrooms. You're going to have just everything's just going to get worse.
So, I mean, at the minute, the police service at the minute, there's only 2 full-time police stations in Northern Ireland at the minute. So you know that's happening at the minute, and so we have to take a stand, and we can't afford to have any more cuts in the public services.
We're here today, firefighters, to show support to our colleagues in the public service who are taking this day of action. As firefighters, we are not on industrial action today. We are not on strike. So we are here to show solidarity. But we're also here to raise our profile in that the fire service has recently been informed it is to implement 5.5% worth of cuts in the next budget. That will have a detrimental effect on firefighter service provision. The fire service is not immune from these cuts, and we are facing these cuts, and we want to bring that to public attention, that your fire services at this point are at risk. The executive, once they come to a decision, will hopefully enter into negotiations with the trade unions in order to, kind of put it this way, soften the blow.
It is a massive statement from those working in the public sector in Northern Ireland to our politicians, and they're insisting on transparency over the Stormont House Agreement, and they're insisting on changes to the cuts in welfare, and they're insisting also on a closer look at the requirement for the loss of the 20,000 jobs. The people on strike today from TransLink are on strike, but they don't know the full extent of the potential cuts. What they know is that their sponsoring department have told TransLink they must save a total of 15 million over the life of the budget that was announced, but we don't know specifically how those cuts are going to impact on individuals. We have an executive and an assembly that were voted in some 5 years ago. I certainly personally don't believe they have a mandate, and I believe the majority of the members of the trade unions on strike today believe they don't have a mandate to do what they're trying to do to the public sector in Northern Ireland. From the statistics that I have seen and the polls that I have seen, I believe the public are fully supportive of the strike that's taking place today and the public servants that are taking that action.
The strike is for our future, for our children, for old people and young people. It's not one particular health or education. It's for everybody in Northern Ireland.
How do we pay for these?
How do we pay for them? Bad housekeeping, not giving people pay rises like the bankers. Get the money off them. Those on tax, high tax incomes that haven't been taxed properly, they need to be taxed.
Enough is enough. Everybody's got a right. They've got a right to employment, they've got a right to life, a right to dignity, and we're here to support that.
People from Northern Ireland gathering to show their dismay to these austerity measures that are being imposed by Stormont. It's totally and utterly unacceptable, and this is something that's going to affect every single family in Northern Ireland. It's not just about public service workers, it's about every worker, every family, and it's not public service worker against a private. It's every single family in Northern Ireland is going to be directly affected by all of these cuts. There's no getting away from it, and they need to stop. And it's now time for people on the Hill in Stormont to stand up and do something for the people of Northern Ireland. Well, I hope today will highlight, if anyone's in any doubt, the thinking of the public of Northern Ireland about these austerity cuts. And for people to think that the answer is to get rid of 20,000 public sector, absolutely not, because everyone will suffer. These people have a part to play in society in Northern Ireland as far as delivering public services.
The people on this picket line don't only see themselves as local people about a regional issue, they see themselves as part of a Europe, a worldwide movement against austerity, to fight back against obviously what's happening against worldwide cuts. In the hospital, the overwhelming support we've actually got about strike has been from the patients themselves, ordinary staff. The recent Belfast Telegraph poll showed that 85% of the public were for people going on strike. This is not about people. The vast majority in this picket line behind me here are not there because of pay raises. They're actually here because they save the services. The NHS is under attack from privatisation. So the people in the streets, you can hear the support we're getting on the road and everywhere else. So we're 100% confident that the people and all workers and communities are behind us.
Part of our issue is about the pay rise or the lack of a pay rise. We were looking 1% as advised by the pay review body. MLAs have granted themselves 11% and have accepted the pay review body, but they are ignoring it as far as health unions are concerned. If the cuts to services are at the highest level, are being implemented at Stormont, where we believe they're Tory-led cuts from the mainland, and they're being imposed on the people of Northern Ireland.
We're hoping that today's strike with the massive support that it has in the communities, is going to show the Stormont Assembly that they've got to stand by the people. They've got to now say to the British government, this is unsustainable. And if they link up with the people, I think we can deliver a result. But it means that the Assembly have to come on board, stop fighting amongst themselves about whether we can actually inflict the cuts in different communities, if we can spread out the cuts across communities. That's not the way forward. We've got to sustain a campaign, and the Stormont Assembly has to get involved in that campaign. There's a mantra that public is bad and private is good. We absolutely disagree with that. We've got to defend public services. It's about us all. It's about our children, education, about our loved ones having a decent health service.
The teachers and classroom assistants standing out here today are motivated by, not by their own greed, but by how this is going to have a devastating impact on the children that they provide an education to. We're standing in one of the most socially deprived areas, and they're talking about reducing our budget by 5% in the school. Now, a reduction of 5% is going to have a terrible sort of impact on how we provide for these children.
This year alone of almost 600 teachers and 1,000 classroom assistants in the education sector, that's going to have a devastating impact on services right across the north, and devastating impact on the lives of workers as well, who are going to lose their salaries. And it will also have a devastating effect on the private sector, because these workers are not going to have jobs, they're not going to have salaries to spend and so on. So overall it's going to have a very, very, very detrimental effect. The answer in paying for it is not, for example, the cut in corporation tax, which is what they're looking for. The answer is not to cut the public sector. There is no evidence that the cut in corporation tax, which is effectively why we are losing our jobs, there's no actual evidence to suggest that that's going to create more jobs in the private sector. And whatever jobs that are created are certainly going to be low-paid jobs, far worse than the public sector, zero-hour contracts and so on and so forth.
So we're out today not just for teachers and assistants, but we're out for everybody who has a son or a daughter out of school. The people who are out in the hospitals are out not just for themselves but for the patients, and the people who are out in various different organisations are there. So it's not just the workers themselves, this is a strike for our future, a strike for our services, a strike for the public sector. Our politicians need to wake up and listen to what people are saying now, because people are very, very clearly saying that this is a strike aimed not just at the Tories but at Stormont because of their policies, and it's a strike against the Stormont Agreement. If you think about it, that's a historic event. There's never been a trade union protest against a Stormont agreed agreement. This is the first ever time that that's happened. So I think it indicates the level of feeling and the level almost of radicalism amongst working people across the north.
No public sector cuts! No less! No less! No public sector cuts! DC cut back! We say fight back! DC cut back! No less! No public sector cuts! No less! No less! No public sector cuts! No less! No less! No public sector cuts!
This evening's event is part of the Imagine Belfast Festival, which is a brilliant new idea. It's really about bringing people together who normally get together in pubs and restaurants and have conversations about politics in Northern Ireland, and bringing them together in a slightly more structured way. And so this evening's event is looking at the whole relationship between charities and lobbying and campaigning and government and politics.
Well, the main issue that we're talking about today is a debate around whether voluntary organisations should campaign and lobby, or whether they should stick to the knitting, as a famous short-lived minister said late last year.
Briggs Newmarket was a very new minister for the Minister for Responsibility for Charities in the Voluntary Community Sector in Westminster, so not here in Westminster, and he made a comment in reference to the lobbying bill when he said that charities should really just stick to their knitting, and by that he meant stick to delivering services and working on good causes, but actually don't get involved in political commentary.
If you think about society and you think about civic engagement and if you think about the history of charities, he made a very foolish statement to say stick to their knitting. Charities are very forceful change agent throughout our history, and particularly in the UK. If it hadn't been for people who stood up to be counted, we wouldn't have the suffragette movement and women's voting, we wouldn't have anti-slavery, and we certainly wouldn't have some of our school and education systems. So people who took the stand, not only did they produce the action, but they voiced their concern about the underlying causes of poverty, isolation, lack of education, alcoholism, drug dependency. So in that sense, charities are more than just a service provider on behalf or for the state.
All of the work that charities do on the whole is political. They're trying to do something to improve life, to change, they're taking action. So in a sense that's political. It's not necessarily party political. But charities have to be very careful about party political campaigning, but they may be campaigning on issues which happen to coincide with a particular party's perspectives, whether that's of whichever side or persuasion. But it's certainly very important that charities do engage in the public realm. That's a major thing that they've done, and charities historically over hundreds of years have helped to shape and change social policies, things that we now take for granted, libraries, swimming pools and so on.
Now, in Northern Ireland, we're very clear about that. We don't get involved in, if you like, party politics, but we have a right to comment on social issues, whether that be homelessness or, as for example today, the welfare reform bill, which is labouring its way through the Northern Ireland Assembly. So charities who are working with people in need, vulnerable people, community groups, have a right to have a voice. You cannot stop people have a voice. And therefore that does, if you like, blur the edges with party politics. But people who want to be involved in party politics join parties. But in joining a party or not joining a party doesn't say that the rest of us who don't join parties have no way in which we should voice our concerns about our society, about our neighbours, about our relationships with each other, and about the nature of the society we want to see going forward.
Charities don't get involved in party politics, and we need to be really clear about this. There's loads of reasons for that, the main one being that it's against charity law. So what we can do is we can get involved in commentary on the issues that are important to organisations, but we don't get involved in party politics, in running for elections or promoting one political party over the other.
Well, some of the work that I've been doing in researching some of these organisations under stress in the current situation, they are finding it harder now to speak out about what is happening to people that they're working with at the grassroots. Poor people, people facing benefit sanctions, people who don't have enough food to eat, people who aren't able to maintain their accommodation. And that has traditionally been a role that charities have been free with the data that they've acquired or from interviews with clients and users to say, this is the problem as we see it. Some of those charities are now receiving contracts from the government to do work rather than grants. And it's been argued that they are not allowed anymore to speak out about the issues that the people they're working with are facing. And that is a fundamental challenge to the role of charities, and so it needs to be contested.
I firmly believe that social change, positive social change, doesn't just happen in government, and that people who can speak out with dissent and critical voices and new ideas are a really important part of democracy. And voluntary and community organisations, social enterprises, political commentators, the business community are all a really important part of that non-governmental voice on how government should function in Northern Ireland.
You have government, you have the private sector and public sector, and you have civil society, which is the charitable sector. Those three pieces hold each other to account. You have to have the civil society. Civil society, if you like, are the conscience that drives the others and holds them when things go wrong.
District Health supports the implementation of the Gaeltacht Quarter Action Plan. It's a community-led regeneration project using culture as the basis to drive economic development and equality in the area. It's a priority for the Minister in terms of our linguistic responsibilities, and we have been working along with other partners for Belfast City Council to pull together the necessary funding to give the skills, expertise and support to the local community to help them to deliver on their vision for creating jobs and skills development and education through the medium of Irish.
This is a long day coming. This is about Slína Gaeltachta, which is 25 plaques spread through it from the city centre right through the heart of West Belfast and the Gaeltacht Quarter, celebrating people who have lived through all the historical times here in this part of the city, telling the story of the past, which I think is absolutely amazing. We're also here to celebrate that this part of West Belfast, the Gaeltacht Quarter, is the fourth place in the north of Ireland to get a hotspot with regard to World Host. That's where businesses come together, hospitality industry comes together, to make sure that they are providing a first-class service. And I mean, the tourists who come here on a daily basis will get a far better service for that. The people here in this part of the city are second to none. The people here in this part of the city deliver that anyway. And this is about people going away who come here, whether they stay a day or spend a couple of days here, that they go away and they tell a story of positivity. And that's the best advertising we can get as a city, where people go away back to their countries and back to where they come from and talk to people, talk to other people. Hopefully we'll get repeat visitors, but also we want people to come here to get a first-class service where they can go around the world and tell people and promote it like nobody else, because we can put all our glossy documents together. The best advertising is word of mouth, and that's people telling that story.
A number of years ago, many of the local tourism stakeholders had initiated a call or a need or a want for a West Belfast Gaeltacht Quarter tourist trail linking the city centre to this part of the city. If you take the tourist board mantra of being visitor inspired, and you currently stood at the top of Castle Street and you want to walk towards the Gaeltacht Quarter, you've got to negotiate 4 lanes of motorway, affectionately known as the West Link, which severs the Gaeltacht Quarter from the broader city. So Slína Gaeltachta was an initiative to try and encourage people to walk every sort of few hundred yards, and as they walk they would meet a different character that was enshrined with the sort of, whether it was a literary figure, a sporting figure, a historical figure, at times a controversial figure even, depending on what way you want to look at it. And as you moved along the sort of from Castle Street to the Falls Road through Divis Street and across the West Link, a number of sort of slabs of Mourne granite would meet you and greet you along the way. So people like Barney Hughes, who had a bakery at Divis Street, the affectionate Belfast baker who invented the Belfast bop, bread at affordable prices, which many people aren't aware of, had a close connection to the Gaeltacht Quarter. People like Carl van Hardenbach, who was the organist at St Peter's Cathedral, who was centrally involved in the writing and creating of the Foggy Dew, a famous sort of traditional song, right through to Richard Rutledge Kane, the Grand Master of the Orange Order, and his gravestone it says here rests an Irish patriot, which sort of exposes historical contradictions, as well as celebrating key influential figures. Bobby Sands, the hunger striker, the sort of iconic Republican revolutionary, a Gael Gore himself. His mural at the side of Sevastopol Street is the most photographed gable wall on the whole of Europe, so we put a plaque there for him also, right through to Siobhan McKinney, who was in Dr. Zhivago, and we also highlight some of the physical sort of buildings, so Ardskull, the Culterland, which we're in here today. So there's a whole host of people there, and we've produced a guide and a map which will take people through from plaque 1 to plaque 25. The beauty of it, so whether you're a local heading into town or a visitor coming to the Gaeltacht Quarter, you can pick up the plaque at any one of the, you can pick up any plaque, there's no particular chronological order to it, it's really just picking up the plaque, walking left or right, all on the same side of the road, and you'll not walk a couple of 100 metres without bumping into one.
This is about building the tourism infrastructure. This is about making sure that our people are selling West Belfast, the Gaeltacht Quarter, in a very positive manner, but where people come in and they get a first class service. So other parts of the city will come over here as well, they will talk to us, they will learn, and we learn from each other. And I think that's the beauty about Belfast being such a small city, is that we do talk to each other, we do learn from each other, and we work with each other in a very positive manner.
The Gaeltacht Quarter is recognised as a place that you can visit in the north, we are guaranteed a particular level of customer service. Only the 4th place in the entire north to receive that sort of status, behind Derry City in advance of the UK city culture, behind Titanic Quarter, and most recently behind Balleek in County Fermanagh. So we're absolutely delighted and enthralled. We have over 37 local businesses that have trained 50% of their front-facing staff to the highest level of customer service. So it's a 2-day training programme. It's sponsored and supported by Dale through a bursary, and businesses need to contribute and employees need to contribute £20 per person to that. And we've managed to sort of pull together a whole host of trainers, and we've worked with local businesses to achieve the magic number of over 25%, which we've done. So we decided to celebrate that as well. It's a major achievement for us, and as I said, guarantees that particular level of customer service and standard, and drives up standards, not just in customer service, but drives up standards in the entire Gaeltacht quarter, and is another major signpost on the journey of realising our tourism potential in this part of the city.
And now, tomorrow's weather.